So now we're going to go through a couple of case discussions, and I want you to pause the video after I explain the case to you in order for you to think about what you would do. Case number 1, a 32-year-old woman admitted to trauma intensive care unit following a serious motor vehicle accident. She has multiple injuries and fractures with several complications. She is now on a ventilator and is continuously sedated. So this means that she is not conscious. She has drugs in her system that keep her unconscious, and she's breathing through a machine. The patient's parents are vigilantly at her bedside. That means that they're not leaving and they've been at her bedside the whole time. Parents report that patient is 1 month away from having her divorce finalized. The husband has reportedly physically and emotionally abusive, so has been abusing her, reportedly. No one has notified the husband. Who is responsible for treatment decisions which the patient cannot make? What are the legal and ethical parameters? Go ahead and pause this video, think what you would do, or write down what you think you should do. So now, to talk about this case, the information or the topics that are relevant is informed consent and surrogate decision making. A surrogate is a substitute person to perform an act or decision. So the patient's own statement's consent may be the basis for ongoing care. However, she is not conscious to be able to make any statements or even give consent. If the information is correct about the husband being abusive, there could be a temporary court order in effect which may remove the estranged husband from making these medical decisions for her. May also have a restraining order. So the healthcare facility can contact the divorce lawyer for appropriate paperwork. And any surrogate decision maker is legally required to act in accordance with the patient's wishes. So in all legality, since the divorce has not been finalized and they don't know if there's a lawyer involved or a restraining order, legally it would be the patient's husband who should be making this decision. Okay? However, if they were to be able to contact the lawyer and find out that all this information is correct, then you could go to the next of kin, which would be the patient's parents. But this situation could be very risky and time sensitive. Let's say she needs life-saving treatment and it needs to happen immediately. As a physician, I would hope that you would probably try to contact the husband first, because legally, if without any paperwork or proof, that's the route you need to go. But if you can't get a hold of that husband and you need someone to give consent immediately, I would go with the patients. Okay? And the patient's parents may file to become the patient's legal guardians for healthcare decision making if there's enough time for that to happen. Fortunately, many hospitals will have a ethics committee or a risk management committee. So in these kind of situations where they need a decision, they need to review a certain case, they could do that. Unfortunately for physicians, these situations can pop up all the time, and you have to make a decision and go with it. So you're just hoping that you've thought of all the angles and you're making the best decision. Case number 2, a 72-year-old woman admitted to neurocritical care unit following cerebral hemorrhage, which is brain bleeding, leaves her with severe brain damage and ventilator dependency, meaning she is on a breathing machine. Okay? The patient and the husband had previously drawn up a living will specifying that she did not want artificial life support in the event of a terminal illness or a permanent vegetative state. The patient's husband is legal next of kin and has surrogate decision-making authority. The husband insists that the patient had not intended for the document to be used in a situation like this. He believes her situation is not terminal, even though she will not be able to recover any meaningful brain function. So the physicians have told them that there will be no meaningful brain function for this woman. The husband is unwilling to withdraw life support, measures consistent with the patient's wishes, he claims. So what should be done, and what are the legal implications involved? Go ahead and pause the video and consider your options. So this case involves informed consent, surrogate decision making, and something called advance directives. Advance directives are basically what you want to happen in the future if a situation occurs. A will is an example of that. If additional communication with the husband fails to resolve the impasse, one option is to go forward with the withdrawal of life support. Basically, that will is a legal binding document and is used for situations like this. Okay? Now, you could always contact the patient's lawyer and medical team to confirm this information and get eyes on that document. I would always set a conference with the family to review the prognosis, which means the prognosis is how we expect the person to do in the future. This would allow the family an opportunity to seek legal review or arrange for a transfer to another healthcare facility. Literally, they could say that the husband could say, I want a second opinion somewhere else. Okay, now, before I go on to case 3, a situation like this, you really want to just try to talk to the husband and explain all the legality that there is so that he fully understands. We're going to have emotions in situations like this, especially with life and death. And even though you might consider an option earlier, when you get to this state, you might kind of freak out and think differently. But having a good staff around that person to discuss and communicate everything could help calm them down. Case number 3. A 75-year-old woman shows signs of abuse that appear to be inflicted by her husband. As he is her primary caregiver, she feels dependent on him and pleads with you not to say anything about it. How would you handle this situation? Go ahead and pause the video and think of your response or record your response. So in this situation, the laws supporting elder abuse, child abuse, and any kind of abuse allow you to break confidentiality and report suspected abuse. Unfortunately for that lady, she's probably dealing with a lot of fear, and for that reason doesn't want you to try to help her. But healthcare workers and teachers are mandated reporters. This means that they must report abuse if they see it or they suspect it. Now, lots of people would say, well, I'm just going to call the cops. No, that's not the right course of action. There are services and people trained to investigate things like abuse at schools or hospitals. So at a school, if I had to report abuse, I would contact a counselor, and the counselor would more than likely contact a social worker. At a hospital, more than likely there would be a social worker or a psychologist or psychiatric official to help investigate this and try to determine if abuse actually occurs. Remember, there is perceived abuse and there is actual abuse. So we need to identify, is this real or maybe this is fictional? And if you think it's possible to give this woman support and access to other services without reporting the case immediately, you have an obligation to address your abusive situation. Me personally, I would not confront the husband. I would just go notify the correct staff in order to handle this. You do not need to get involved in this situation. You just need to report it. Case number 4. This is one of my favorite cases. A 60-year-old man has a heart attack and is admitted to the medical floor with a very poor prognosis. Again, prognosis is what the outcome looks like. He asks that you do not share any of his medical information with his wife, as he does not think she will be able to take it. His wife catches you in the hall and asks about her husband's prognosis. Would you tell his wife? What are you required to do legally? Go ahead and pause the video and consider what you would do. So, duty to maintain confidentiality remains strong in this case, as information about the patient's health does not directly concern others' health, welfare, or safety. So, literally or legally, you should not tell her. This would be a breach of HIPAA. Remember, you get to restrict access of your medical information to anybody you like after you are 18. Now, I think that it's pretty horrible that a husband wouldn't want to be completely truthfully honest with his wife, especially if his prognosis is not good. So, you hear the next bullet point is the wife is certainly affected by her husband's health, and every effort should be made to encourage an open dialogue between them. So you should definitely encourage the husband to tell his wife. But I would not tell the wife unless he gives you permission. Now, let's say he does sign HIPAA paperwork that says, I don't want you to tell my wife right now about this, and I want you to do everything you can to try to save my life. Well, in the moment that he actually goes unconscious because of this condition, and you need a surrogate to make decisions, you found a loophole. Now you could tell his wife, hey, he's unconscious. We need you to consent for a life-saving heart surgery. This is what's going on. That would be a loophole for you to be able to necessarily tell her so that you could try to get a decision made to save this person's life. Now, there are many other cases throughout this PowerPoint. So if you would like to review them, you are welcome to, and review it on the PowerPoint in the legal folder. This actually up here, the worst medical mistakes, is a link to the top 10 worst medical mistakes that have ever occurred. Now, this is only the top 10. There's been a lot of other ones out there, so feel free to watch this video in your spare time, okay? This is it for the recording for today. I hope you have a great day.